Whether reason will prevail depends only partly upon us. We must hope and strive for the best. We must prepare for the worst.
Well, it's a good question. I think it's a combination of both, right? In other words, it has a number of elements to it. On the one hand, the way I look at it is that there was an overarching policy, a policy of containment. And the policy of containment had a couple of pillars to it. But let's talk first about the policy itself. The policy of containment was that Hamas is an enemy. We know about it. It's tried to attack us. It has attacked us. It's killed people. It's carried out some sophisticated attacks. It's kidnapped people, right? Everyone knows who Hamas is. Everyone knows that they are an enemy. Everyone knows that they are lethal. But the thought in Israel was that while we understand that, we can contain Hamas and keep it at a minimum. And how do we keep it at a minimum? And why do we want to keep it at a minimum? And those are the main questions. So why do you want to keep it at a minimum? Is because, like any country and any military, Israel faces a expanding, I would say, kind of table of threats, but limited resources. So you have Iran, you have Hezbollah in Lebanon, you have the West Bank, and you have Gaza. So if you say to yourself, listen, I have to stay focused on the big ones, Iran, Hezbollah, and we can contain Hamas, that makes sense, because I can't do everything. So I can do where I really need to do things on the bigger issues. And Hamas and Gaza, I'll keep it where it needs to be at a low flame. But then how did they do that? And that ties into what you spoke about. So technology was a big piece of that, right? Fences, missile defense, barriers above ground, below ground, and of course, soldiers along the border, right? If, God forbid, something were to happen. So it seemed that it was under control. With that also was the intelligence. We thought we had good intelligence. We thought we knew everything they were planning. We thought we could see everything they were doing. And therefore, when you thought you knew everything, and you thought you heard everything, and you thought you saw everything, and you had your technology, and you had the soldiers along the border, and you had your overarching policy, that's what led to it. So what led to this overall? Yes, technology, a belief that we had the intelligence, a belief that we understood what Hamas really was doing, when now we clearly know we did not, but also, and this you can't run away from, was the overarching policy of containment, which now comes into question. Is that even a legitimate policy to contain a threat? Even if it starts small, even if it's just at the bottom of the totem pole of the threats that you face, is that even legitimate for a country to say, I'm not going to deal with it, I'm not going to confront it, I'm not going to destroy it, I'm going to contain it? I mean, I think it and I know it. Right. I think it because let's look at the reality, right? Look at the famous pager attack against Hezbollah, right? I mean, you have to be able to sell pagers loaded with explosives to a terrorist organization, one of your most lethal, sophisticated enemies. They have to believe they're buying it from some random civilian company when really it's a front of the Mossad, the Israeli equivalent of the CIA. And then you can press a button and they all blow up. I mean, that's sophisticated shit, right? And the fact that Israel was able to do that shows the penetration, the quality of the intelligence, the amazing sophisticated capabilities. Look at Iran in the 12-day war in June. Israel takes out the entire nuclear leadership, the entire scientific leadership, all the heads of the military. I mean, you had amazing intelligence on the ground in Iran. So we see where we have it. We see where we don't have it. The lack tells us the bigger story, right? That's one. That's my think. My no is because I read Bibi's own book. Bibi wrote an autobiography that came out in 2022, where he spoke about how in 2014, during one of the regular operations that Israel was waging against Hamas in Gaza, and on average, since Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005, there was, on average, an operation every 2 years. There were two other members of the government at the time, Naftali Bennett Avigdor Lieberman, both more hawkish than Netanyahu, who were pushing Netanyahu to do a massive operation in Gaza and take down Hamas. And in fact, Netanyahu himself writes that I didn't want to do it, and I thought they were wrong because I had to keep my eye set on Iran, and this would have distracted us. I mean, he admits that this was his policy. So, and by the way, I can't say he was wrong necessarily, right? I think in the knowledge that we had and in the thinking of the time, this was the belief that we have to stay focused on the primary threats and not be distracted by the junior varsity terrorist group, as you were calling it in our pre-record conversation. I mean, that's very much how they were viewed. Everything I say now is in hindsight, because had we spoken October 6th and you would have asked me about the policy of containment, I probably would have told you, like many other people in this country, hey, it's working. Don't touch it if it's not broken. But it was deeply broken. So we now know that it's, as a policy, it doesn't work. As a policy, it is flawed. And that is something that requires of Israel to abandon this policy, I believe, completely. Because what we have learned is that if you don't deal with the enemy in its inception, or close to it at least, it will grow into a disproportionate size and scale and scope, and will one day try to carry out such an attack like the devastating one of October 7th. So as a policy, I completely reject it today. I think we have to, and we'll jump to the end, I think we have to adopt a different policy, which is a policy of preemption or preventative operations. In other words, not to allow any enemy of yours to ever build up a capability that could pose such a threat, a strategic threat to you. So the idea that an enemy has missiles that can strike in your home front, you don't allow that to happen, even if they don't use them. You have to take them out beforehand. That applies to Hamas, that applies to Hezbollah. An enemy that's digging tunnels, you don't just go in and destroy the tunnel. You go in and destroy the organization. And that's a total different way of thinking. And it's a very difficult pill to swallow, because what essentially I'm prescribing here is a perpetuated conflict at a different scale, at a different intensity, not full-on war like what we saw up until the ceasefire in October, but a continued need to fight. And that's a tough pill to swallow, for first and foremost for the Israeli people. I mean, first and foremost, it'll be tough on the Israeli people because the toll it will take on the Israeli military, the Israeli reservists, the Israeli economy. I mean, it'll be and not just in loss of life, but just time spent, resources spent, and of course, loss of life, but also from on the international stage, and particularly when it comes to the United States. And now we talk at a time when you have a president who's in the White House who is relatively sympathetic to Israel and supportive of Israel. But what happens if you have suddenly somebody who's completely on the opposite side of all this? Will they give you the support and the space to do this? It's questionable. So I don't think at all that this is at all easy. This is very, very difficult, but we don't have much of an alternative.